low cholesterol has been proven to cause violence.
Really?
People who have low cholesterol have a high rate of causing violence and have a high rate of death by violence. Your brain is made 70% of cholesterol. Well, I can show it to you.
Nutrition's such a weird. There's so many different opposing, narratives on it that I just went, I'm not even going to pay attention to any of this stuff. I'm just going to eat whatever I feel like in the moment and trust that my body's instincts are better information than whatever the latest health trend is.
Yeah, I'll tell you the danger of that is that the meat companies, are you aware of the meat companies that are supplying the supermarkets with meat? Companies like Tyson Foods, they provide most of the poultry in the world. JBS supplies most of the beef, and you've got some others, but those are two of the biggest. But the top 4 meat packers in the world are part of the cabal that's spearheading this plant-based mock meat movement, where they're, ironically, these meat companies are spearheading the movement to try to replace real meat.
Yeah, I'm aware. I mean, I guess I don't know a lot of the specifics, but I am aware of that aspect of it. And I'm aware that ultimately everything is owned by a handful of funds, right? Vanguard, BlackRock. So when you see shit like Budweiser, Target, these companies that keep taking huge hits over social issues,
social engineering.
I don't at all believe that those are accidents, right? They're definitely they're going to take a hit.
No, it can be proven at this point that they're members of a group that have these rules, and they get certain benefits for losing money by trying to force this social engineering down our throats. There are stockholders out there that are starting to organize so that they can file class action lawsuits against these corporations because they have a legal responsibility to make a profit. And instead of pursuing their legal responsibilities, what they're doing is they're trying to engineer these social changes. Like men competing against women in NCAA sports, men taking the championship trophies home just because they have long hair and they claim to be a woman. The vegan movement's right there with it. This, the trans this, the trans that, the homo this, the homo that. And what people do in the bedroom should go back to what it used to be. That's your own personal business. You don't need to try to force that down my throat or my children's throat. But it's not something, you mentioned the economic hit that they're taking, and it's not an accident. This is by design. Part of it is, notice that like Budweiser, for instance, anything that is a keystone American culture, corporate icon, is Coca-Cola is another one that's doing this. So anything that has that's considered like American pie type
Americana, yeah,
it's going to self-destruct. They're going to commit hara-kiri because it's part of a cultural suicide. They want to tear down the Western culture because they've got something that they want to replace it with. But before this new global culture can come in and replace the old one has to be destroyed. And you can see it in the tearing down of statues around the world and in the U.S., taking books out of the library.
For me, the viewers, for yourself, because I guarantee you do this in your own life. You got a list of folks who you got problems and issues with. You won't address it directly. It's going to come up third party, and they're going to think you're a bitch. They're not going to respect you. They respect you infinitely more if you just fucking bring it to the table. Christos, have I ever
LPW, what are you doing?
You bring anything to my table?
Oh, sorry, guys. I was just not doing anything in particular. I was just why? Why do you want to know?
I mean, were you playing that for us or on accident?
No. I wasn't playing that for you. It's just I clicked on it just to see what they were talking about real quick. I didn't know that you guys could hear my earphones.
Oh yeah.
Oh well.
Anyways, yeah, but I think you're 100% right about it's a controlled demolition of the culture, and I don't know if it's a suicide. I don't view it as a suicide. I view it as like all the green movement, right? All the clean energy shit. If anybody understands economics a little bit and how the petrodollar works, you'd understand that getting away from fossil fuels.
And deal with it a different way than a lot of us.
OTW.
Who really doesn't want no problem. I'm going to engage as much as possible with someone like you.
OTW.
This is what I mean. Oftentimes it is debatable.
What?
Right.
We can hear it.
Oh, it's because my screen is still shared. Hold on, sorry. I'm gonna fix that. Sorry about that, guys.
You're good.
Oh, I'm so sorry about that, man.
But yeah, the fossil, the clean energy, the no fossil fuels, that's exactly dollar death.
Yeah, it's a part of the controlled demolition of the U.S. being a world power. So whatever you're aware of the World Economic Forum, and the 2000. Let's say the 2000. I've got them all cataloged on one of my videos. Took me hours to catalog all of these, but there's about 2,400 of the mega corporations around the world: Coca-Cola, Levi's, Target, Walmart, Coors, Budweiser, Bank of China, Communist Bank of China, Communist Agricultural Bank of China, all the Wells Fargo, every huge bank in the world, every huge corporation, every food corporation, every meat corporation, every grain corporation, every pharmaceutical corporation. They're part of this push, and it's just today it's Budweiser and Target. Tomorrow it will be Coors and Walmart. The whole thing is a planned, controlled demolition of Western culture, Western power, Western wealth, and it's to be replaced with a Chinese model of corporate communism, where the corporations are still practicing capitalism, but for the rest of it's socialism.
I believe that's exactly fascism, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And,
yeah, I've got an economics background actually, and so I've been aware of and watching this stuff go on for a bit.
Yeah, so if you've got an economic background and you understand economics, you understand the shift that's happening right now. It's actually been happening for a long time with this, with corporations that are too big to fail, and where the profits are privatized and the losses are socialized. So
right.
that any losses that they take are more than made up for with subsidies and grants and government programs, where they're either taking money out of our pockets and giving it to a corporation, or they're just printing money out of thin air and then putting it into the pockets of these corporations. And meanwhile, they're cutting social programs to make it, and that will appease the pleb class who consider themselves conservatives, but these are conservatives that don't recognize fascism, and so they
don't understand the economics of it.
Right.
Yeah, I actually when I worked in banking, I was primarily in agriculture and commercial, and so I've been watching it in farming specifically, because it's just you got the bills being pushed that support farmers, but in a way that's preferential to the big boys. We get economies of scale, and then it would be impossible for anybody to decide to start farming if you didn't inherit it from an ancestor. I don't think that it would be possible to scrape together enough cash to buy a combine and a bit of farmland.
Yeah, not as a little guy. Someone like Bill Gates can do it, but not someone like us. The cost of agricultural real estate is tethered to the price of commercial real estate in cities. And so the price of a prime lot in a busy commercial sector in New York City, where just a little lot might cost you millions of dollars, that's affecting the price of acreage out in the middle of nowhere, where the potential profits that you can make off of that acreage is nowhere near enough to help you pay the mortgage on that acreage. And so it's, they've set up an incentive so that the only viable type of animal agriculture is the kind where you buy a tiny little piece of land, put a bunch of cattle on it, and then feed them grain and fatten them up for the supermarkets. And that's the model that's actually giving the vegans fuel to demonize all animal agriculture. And they're trying to push things like IP13 in Oregon, which would criminalize all animal husbandry. Would criminalize,
Really?
Yes, criminalize hunting, criminalize fishing. So there's several states right now where there's big money pushing legislation to criminalize any type of agriculture or activities that would lead to putting meat on the table.
Yeah, it's when you get right down to it, the green movement, the environmental movement, the animal welfare, whatever you'd call it, PETA sort of shit, it's all anti-human.
It is anti-human, yes.
As is communism. I don't even view communism at all as an economic or political machine. Those are just methods to what's really a religion and a way of viewing the world. Like when you get into the anti-family movement or the family abolishment, like if you've heard of that, it's pretty dark.
Yeah, even Paul was attacking, the nuclear family. These
Was
people
he?
that yeah,
I didn't hear that.
He was coming down on me for being monogamous, which is an element of the nuclear family. And he repeatedly attacked me for being monogamous and used that as an indicator that I'm not a free man or not love able or not honor able. And so, these people that, yes, their focus, that one focus, if you isolate it and say, we need to dissolve these contracts that are subversive to the people, these government methods that the government is using to put their thumb on us. Yes, those are important issues, but there are other important issues that can be discussed and that can help people become free. And someone like Paul, who's got it right on one issue, but at the same time is all for dissolving the nuclear family, is all for criminalizing meat. There are elements to that philosophy that's being espoused by these individuals that are elements of the Great Reset, which is a fascist, communist, global takeover.
Yep. Yeah, and I just lost my train of thought. I don't know how you could attack somebody for monogamy. I mean, if you just look at history, it's worked. Not perfectly, never will. People are complicated. My marriage was short and didn't last, but I don't know how anybody could say that it's not clearly the best method. Same with meat. I don't see how you could say humans aren't supposed to eat meat. Well, if you look at humanity, everywhere, for all of time, people ate meat. So obviously we are.
Well, yeah. You have to be careful because the vegan machine has tried to portray that the biggest argument for continuing to eat meat is a cultural one. You know, we've always eaten meat. It's part of our culture. Therefore, we have to keep eating meat. But the real reason why we need to eat meat is because there's a long list of nutrients like vitamin B12, choline, creatine, vitamin A, vitamin B6, vitamin D, vitamin F, vitamin K2, MK4, heme iron, CoQ10, CLA, taurine, L-carnosine, carnitine. These are nutrients that are either completely absent in a vegan diet or they are very low. And a low amount of these vitamins can cause a deficiency and health problems. This is these missing nutrients are the reason why most vegans will quit veganism within the first 2 years.
And people who are vegans almost universally look unhealthy, right? They're skinny. They got rings around their eyes. That you could just look at. You can look at somebody and tell they're vegan 80% of the time.
Yeah, you can. There's a certain look. Their skin begins to take on a crepe paper type appearance, where where the skin wrinkles. It's these big folds, and they have those hollowed out eyes where they've lost all the ocular fat around their eyes, and their eyes sink back into their heads. And plus,
I know that. I was
go ahead.
just personally, if I don't eat meat, like if I wake up and let's say I have pancakes for breakfast and then macaroni and cheese later or something, like if I'm not eating meat throughout the day, by the end of the day, my mood's off. I got a little bit of brain fog and I'm crabby. I don't know if everybody's like that, but.
Well, it doesn't happen usually for most people within one day, but eventually there's going to be deficiencies that will cause brain fog and anger issues.
Yep.
Just cognitive malfunction.
Confused and angry. That's how they want us.
Yeah. Low cholesterol has been proven to cause violence.
Really?
People who have low cholesterol have a high rate of causing violence and have a high rate of death by violence. Your brain is made 70% of cholesterol. Well, I can show it to you.
Yeah, I don't disbelieve you. I absolutely believe that. I do know that the low cholesterol push was not beneficial, as is all the plant-based stuff. Soy shit. I know that my dad's side of the family was really into health, the health food scene, and when I was growing up, and I don't think that worked out well for them. A lot of soy milk, soy this, soy that. So what do you think about the carnivore diet? Is that too much?
The keto program?
Or keto, yeah. Like the Joe Rogan, I only eat meat all the time thing.
Yeah, I think that carnivore is like the animal-based keto. In other words, you can do a keto diet and consume things like avocado, seed oils, soy protein shakes.
Seed oils are a big part of the problem, is my understanding of it. Because of how much shit you have to do to get the oil out of the seed. It's basically chemicals is how I understand it.
seed oils are mostly omega-6s. So omega-6s are inflammatory. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. And traditionally, the human diet was very balanced in those two types of fats, and also included saturated fats. So if you go back 100 years, when all of these disease rates were much, much lower than they are now, the saturated animal fat consumption was very high, and the seed oil consumption was basically zero. And as the saturated animal fat has gone down and the oxidized seed oil consumption has gone up, then all of these diseases have gotten much worse, and they're at epidemic levels now. So, yeah.
If you look at old pictures or videos of people on the beach, there didn't used to be any obesity.
Right, not any. No one in the entire, photograph of the beach from the 1920s, and there could be 500 people in that photograph, and not one of them obese. And
Yeah, I mean, even in the 60s, 70s.
Well, yeah, you don't have to go back to the 20s. You're right. You can go back to just the 70s, and it was very similar. But there were more fat people, but not near what we've got today, where the obesity rate here in the United States is around 50%. And I think that's an underestimate. If you take a picture of the beach these days, most of the people in the photograph are going to be obese.
It's like beached whales.
Yeah, it is. And
I tell people that cigarettes are all the vegetables I need. Each cigarette gives me 2 servings of vegetables. I got tobacco and menthol.
Say what?
Each cigarette I smoke is 2 servings of vegetables, as far as I'm concerned. I've got tobacco and menthol.
Yeah. It's one way to look at it.
That's a good one.
It's tongue in cheek, obviously. Smoking is basically the only bad habit I have left, and I'm keeping it. Well, no, I drink Pepsi. Way too much Pepsi. But that sugar addiction ain't nothing to fuck with.
Yeah. We're all addicted to sugar. I know I am, man. I have a fucking issue with sugar. I don't know. I'm trying to get rid of that issue, but it's not easy. It's the worst addiction.
Because sugar's in everything.
In life.
Dude, it blew my mind in 2017 when I found myself sitting in jail. Of all the habits that I had that landed me there, sugar is the only thing I craved. And I wasn't even cut off from sugar, right? Like, you get sugar in jail, just not as much as I was used to. And I didn't care about a cigarette. I didn't care about dope. I wanted pop.
Oh boy.
And when I got out, the first thing I did was I ran to the grocery store and I bought like a package of fried chicken and a 2-liter of, I don't remember what kind of pop, something of pop. Or no, it was a case of pop. I bought a case of pop. I had that thing halfway drank by the time I got home.
You got that?
Yeah, I'm seeing it.
On screen.
Low cholesterol and violent crime. Results, conclusions. Adjusting for other factors, low cholesterol is associated with increased subsequent criminal violence.
Wild.
So these are facts.
Wild.
Yeah.
Hey, will you just repeat that, please, Garland? That was fucked up. Please repeat that. Oh yeah, you zoomed in. That's even better.
Adjusting for other factors, low cholesterol is associated with increased subsequent criminal violence. It's crazy how you never hear about some of this shit.
Yeah, well, they don't put that on mainstream news, do they?
They don't. And they also don't tell you, for as much as we hear about inequity in the criminal justice system, which I do believe is there, right? Like, I wouldn't have believed it until I was involved in it. Minorities do get worse convictions. I think that's not racially motivated. It's economically motivated mostly. But what they don't tell you is that, like, the best predictor of incarceration is fatherlessness. If you were raised without your father, that's the number one. Well, after being male, there's an age and a sex one. It's males of a certain age who were raised without dads.
Low cholesterol, death by violence.
And what's cholesterol in? That's like eggs.
Yeah, eggs. So, human and animal research indicates that low or lowered cholesterol levels may reduce central serotonin activity, which in turn is causally linked to violent behaviors.
Serotonin is the like soothing, feel good one, right?
Yeah.
And dopamine is like the excitement one.
Yeah, pleasure.
Right.
So, knowing what we know about this globalist agenda and how they want to enact this fascism, it makes sense that every time you go to the doctor, they want to test your cholesterol and then give you statins to lower your cholesterol. And I'm not saying that every doctor is in on some conspiracy, but at some level, there is a conspiracy, and a lot of doctors are just too wrapped up in their lifestyle, and buying that third and fourth home, buying that beachfront property. Meanwhile, they're telling us that global warming is going to cause the sea levels to rise, which would flood all of these multi-million-dollar homes.
Right.
These rich people are buying up left and right, which they wouldn't be if they really believed the narrative. Meanwhile, they're trying to lower all of our cholesterol and got all these vegans running around, pointing their fingers at meat eaters saying, your cholesterol is an issue, when they're the one, what the vegans these days are actually openly talking about murdering ex-vegans and non-vegans. They really have their sights on the ex-vegans because they consider them heretics. They're traitors because they were part of the cult and now they've rejected the cult, and nothing pisses them off more than a defector.
Yeah, I used to work in banking, doing lending, and it was very telling to me that of all the underwriting you do, all the risk analysis that goes into approving or rejecting a loan, no lenders are worried about rising sea levels. You got a 30-year mortgage, and nobody is doing any analysis on melting ice caps.
Yeah.
Well, if you look on the on Google Earth, they're no longer there. There are no longer any ice caps. They have already melted long time ago. Look it up.
I don't know if I trust that Google Earth is really displaying the Earth.
No, but I think you can look it up. The ice caps melted in 1953, I think, or something like that. I don't know. You should look it up. Garland, check that out. When have the ice caps melted? Type that somewhere in whatever you're looking at.
Okay, I will.
Check that out. Have the ice caps melted, and when did they melt?
Most recently, as 5,000 years ago, 60% of the world's fresh water is bound up in Antarctic ice. So, according to this, 5,000 years ago, they melted.
Oh, see? So we never actually had ice caps, guys. So there is no flooding or, that's a fucking delusion.
Well, and you can look at pictures of the Statue of Liberty and see how hot, like old pictures, and see that the sea level has not changed against it at all.
No, but that's what
Right.
I'm saying. The sea level hasn't changed. There hasn't been any flood, all over the world, and the ice caps melted 5,000 years ago. So who's telling us lies? Who's telling us the truth? Why were there ice caps before, and now there's not any ice caps anymore? And if there was going to be, global warming, and the ice caps were to melt, and the whole world was going to flood, then why isn't there any water all over the world? What's going on? Something's wrong. Now, who's lying? What the fuck is going on?
Well, the environmental movement has a perfect track record of being wrong about every upcoming cataclysm, as far as I'm aware. Now, one thing that I do think is fucking up the environment that's not part of the narrative is all the chemtrails and the geoengineering.
Well, there's something else that's causing climate change, and that's tillage. It causes desertification.
And I know that out here in Kansas, you can see that because, like, if you go into rural Kansas, the river, people still call it the river, but it's just a rock bed.
Yeah, one of the biggest carbon emissions that we've got is tillage. The use of tillage can stimulate the loss of soil organic carbon into the atmosphere.
And that would be correlated with plant-based agriculture, wouldn't it?
Correct. And so everything that they're trying to pin on animal agriculture is actually being caused by crop agriculture. You know, if you were to go out into my fields right now, they're all lush and green, and the soil is covered in shadow because there's so much foliage that the sun is not beating directly down on the soil. So the soil is nice and cool. The soil life is thriving. There's worms. There's all kinds of insects. There's nematodes, bacteria, fungus. You know, I go out there after a rain. There's toadstools. There's mushrooms all over the place. It's just thriving with life. But if you go out into these cornfields and soybean fields and all of these monocrops, there's no cover, so the sun is beating directly down on the soil, and what that does is it causes the soil to become very, very hot, and that heat kills all the life in the soil, and the tillage causes these carbon emissions. So that the issue isn't so much that the carbon is in the atmosphere, but the carbon is no longer in the soil. That's an issue because carbon in the soil is what makes the soil absorb water and hold water. So if there's no carbon in the soil, then the soil becomes hydrophobic. This is one of the reasons why, like in the corn belt, the soybean belt right now, when it rains, it floods because that water can't soak into the soil anymore. It's so running off into the streams and rivers, and that causes agrochemical runoff. And you get nitrogen running off into the rivers that kills all the fish. Eventually that synthetic nitrogen makes its way into the Gulf of Mexico, and now we've got an oceanic dead zone out there the size of Connecticut. This is all caused primarily 90% by crop agriculture. The other thing that the tillage does with that hot soil is, you've got, let's say you've got a big patch, because in the Midwest you've got millions of acres of tilled soil, and that causes these hot thermals. So you've got a very strong, hot, dry wind that blows straight up into the atmosphere, and it chases away, it dries up and blows away would-be rain events. So it decreases precipitation in regions where monocropping is very prevalent. It's like a blow dryer, like one of those hot blow dryers that women use on their hair. It dries up moisture in the air, and it won't allow that moisture to fall. So that's why we have droughts in these areas. And in these areas, because it's not raining anymore, they're having to water the fields with aquifer, with wells that suck water from the aquifer, and then that's causing entire communities, like in California, where they're rationing water in the cities. They're telling people in different places of the world that you can't even take a shower. They're saying stop taking showers You can shower once a week. Well, why? Because the monocrops are sucking up all the water. And if they would at least plant some cover crops, use cattle or some type of ruminant to come in there and deposit the fertilizers, and integrate livestock agriculture with crop agriculture, then we could reverse this desertification that's happening. But instead, the industries that are causing the desertification, which are corporations like Bayer, Monsanto, General Mills, Kraft, all these seed companies, the crops, the monocrops, those are the very profitable, very powerful corporations that are lobbying to have the meat industry obliterated.
Well, they're subsidized, aren't they? All the monocrops were basically selected by government subsidies.
Yeah, well, there are subsidies that go to livestock, and there are subsidies that go to monocrops. But the monocrops receive like 500% more subsidies than do the livestock. So the vegan activists will point at these only they'll give people the numbers on the livestock subsidies, but they won't disclose those same numbers for crop agriculture. And when you look, you'll see that there's 500% more going to the crop agriculture. And and then what they do is, like soybeans, for instance, 92% of all the soybeans in the world are processed to extract the oil. The oil is the gold there because it's very valuable. What's left over is what they call soy meal, and most of it is largely inedible by humans.
Animal feed, right?
Yeah, and so they sell that to livestock farmers, and so the oil is 100% consumed by humans, either as cooking oil, ingredients in ultra processed junk foods, or as biodiesel. So it's consumed by humans in one way or another, and that's 92% of all the soybeans in the world where we're extracting that oil. And then the waste that's left over, the byproducts we can't use in any other way, is being fed to livestock. The problem is for us is that they play a little math trick on people, because every soybean is only 20% gold or 20% oil. And so what's left over is this 80% inedible residue, and by weight, it makes they turn around and say, well, 80% of the soybean crop is going to feed livestock. So if we get rid of livestock, then we can get rid of 80% of the soybean agriculture. But that's a lie, because they're not telling the whole truth. If they were to tell the whole truth, they would say, well, only 7% of all soybeans are being grown specifically to feed livestock. 92% of all the soybeans are being grown specifically to extract the oil, and the waste that's left over has been turned into a profit maker, because now they sell it as livestock feed. But if you were to get rid of all the livestock, that will not decrease soybean agriculture. In fact, you have to replace all of that protein with something, and soybeans they're deficient in one amino acid. I can't remember which one it is right now, but it's not a perfect protein like meat, but it's the best that the plant world can offer. So if you were going to replace the meat protein, and if you were to abolish all meat, fish, dairy, and eggs, then you would have to more than quadruple the amount of soybean farming that's happening right now, just to make up the difference in lost protein grams.
Well, and it comes with massive hits of estrogen, right?
Well, there's phytoestrogens in there as well, which do affect the human biology as estrogen.
And it seems like testosterone is in short supply these days.
Yeah, they've declared war on testosterone. They say that it's part of this toxic masculinity, and that testosterone needs to be lowered in humans.
And I think it's definitely the opposite, like everything else. Toxic masculinity is femininity, basically. It's not masculinity at all.
Yeah, I mean, what is toxic masculinity exactly? Is it, I mean, is that like a man who takes care of his family, opens a door for a woman, um, values monogamy, is a protector? Is this, I think these are things that fit into the toxic. Everything that's good about a man is considered toxic
Well, I
masculinity.
think that that's what's really under attack, but I don't think that anybody would point to that as what toxic masculinity is. I don't know. The minute I hear somebody use that phrase, I sort of stop listening.
Yeah, me too. I know that I'm talking to someone that is either looking to harm or is brainwashed, one of the two.
So what do you grow?
I just raise goats and cows.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have two
What are-
chickens. I have 2 chickens left out of 12. So
All right.
raccoons are a motherfucker.
Yeah, I've got chickens as well. I use them mostly for eggs, but every once in a while, one of them will show up with a bunch of chicks. So,
Yeah, no, I live in city limits. We got, every now and then when you get a bunch of chicks, it's not perfect. It's not a perfect way to tell if that's a female or a male. So we did end up with, I think, 1 rooster that we got rid of pretty quick because, like, fuck that. I don't need that noise at 4 a.m.
yeah, they do vocalize too much for sure. And if you've got more than one, then they'll get into a vocal contest, and you'll get twice as much.
No, the minute I found out that we had one at all, I listed it on Facebook Facebook Marketplace for free. Anybody who wants this can have it. And a few hours later, I had this dude pulls up. It's a young Mexican guy. He pulls up in like a 2-door car, and I'd said on the listing, bring something to put it in because I don't have a cage or whatever you need. And he just walks into the chicken pen, scoops it up, and drives off holding a chicken under one arm.
Yeah. I've had the same thing happen with goats, where people pull up, in a pickup truck, and they just take a couple of young goats and put them in the front seat and drive away. So yeah, it's there's some people out there that don't have the infrastructure to. They're not. They're not
worried about their car, I guess. Like I wouldn't want a chicken pooping over me the whole way home.
Yeah, that wouldn't be pleasant at all. But
so what do you eat? To kind of jump back to the oil thing, we try to use olive oil or my girlfriend started saving bacon grease as sort of a health conscious thing to try to avoid too much soy because we have kids, what do you do?
Well, I've got all of my animals are pastured. I don't feed grains at all, and so the problem with grains is that they contain grains are seeds. The oil in seeds is high in omega-6s, so it's inflammatory. It causes the type of inflammation that's associated with arterial sclerosis. These are they're unsaturated. That's another lie that was told to us because most people don't realize what they mean by saturated is that these fats are surrounded by a protective layer of hydrogen atoms, and it prevents the fat from going rancid, which is what happens when they're oxidized. So these seed oils become oxidized very easily. One of the problems with olive oil is that there were recently several studies where they went out and bought a bunch of different brands of olive oil, went back to the lab and tested it, and found out that it was just a little bit of olive oil mixed mostly with corn oil or canola oil. So it ends up Yeah, so
That's
you're
suspect.
yeah. So let me see if I can pull that up and I'll show you.
I mean, it's past suspect. That's just straight up fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah, my girlfriend. I saw somebody in the comments say bacon grease is tasty. I don't believe that they meant it as in a sarcastic way, but the bacon grease thing did sort of at first, like, and it still is sort of like, I feel like that's a waste product, but I recognize that it's just sort of my own, how I've, that it's an inaccurate belief probably, but she strains it so it doesn't get like the funk, it's just, I don't know. I'm not a cook.
I do lots of cooking, but what I do is I have tallow, beef tallow. Do you know what that is? That's just the fat that normally they would throw away. So whenever I have a steer or a cow slaughtered, then I'll request that all of the fat be packaged, and so I will. There's two ways that I'll use that. I'll cube it up into little pieces, and then I'll cook it on low heat and separate the oil from the collagen, and then I'll put that in a container and I'll use it like other people use Crisco or something like that. That's grass-fed tallow, so it's got a balance of omega-6s and omega-3s. It's perfectly healthy. The problem with the olive oil, like I said, is that many times it's not olive oil. It's a little bit of olive oil mixed with mostly inflammatory omega-6 seed oils, and then with the bacon grease, the problem with the fat in bacon is that pigs commercially are fed a lot of grains, and the fat that becomes part of their the fat in their bodies ends up being these seed oils, and so it's a hidden source of these inflammatory omega-6s. That's why grocery store grain-fed supermarket beef has got a skewed omega-6 to 3 ratio. It's about 26s for every one omega-3, and that's really one of the reasons why people will take things like fish oils, which are omega-3s. Omega-3s are known to lower the inflammation that causes the heart disease, but the root of the problem is too many 6s and not enough 3s in the diet. And so the bacon grease is high in omega-6s because of the feed that they're feeding the pigs. Now, if you were to go out and kill a wild pig, the bacon that you would get from that would have a balanced omega-6 to 3 ratio, and that would be ideal. But not all bacon is created equal. And, just like a lot of other things, they've as far as supermarket provided meats, they've been, they've been engineered to be unhealthy, like a lot of the plant foods have. The plant foods have all these pesticides all over them. They're high in inflammatory seed oils. 75% of the American diet is these ultra processed foods. So, what they'll do is they'll do a study and they'll look at these people that are eating a 75% ultra processed plant-based diet and see that they're eating a little bit of meat, and then they'll blame all of this disease on the meat. Similar to like they did with the processed meats these days are they're marinated in a preservative that's called a nitrate. Nitrates are known to oxidize the hemoglobin in your blood, which makes it difficult for the blood to hand off oxygen. And so it can actually chronically lower the oxygenation of your tissues. And so processed meats can lead to higher rates of cancer because of this handicapped ability of the fact that your blood is now handicapped in its ability to keep your tissues well oxygenated. And so in order to demonize red meat, they inexplicably pair red meat with processed meat. So you'll hear this phrase all the time, red and processed meat, red and processed meat. So it's a phrase that everyone now has heard so many times that they think, well, red and processed meat are a category in and of itself. Well, no, red meat is a category and processed meat is another category. But if we handcuff red meat to processed meat and the pair shows a higher rate of cancer, now we can demonize the processed meat and the red meat and just say red meat is guilty by association. When in the very, to start with, there's no credible reason to pair these two and study them as a unit, red and processed meat. If they wanted to be honest, they would study red meat independently of processed meat. And then you could even divide red meat into two categories where you've got the grain-fed meat and the grass-finished meat. And there's two completely different chemistries going on there as well.
Well, they don't want to be honest. That's definitely the point. I view science, the scientific industry, whether that's nutrition or pharmaceutical, whatever. If it's a peer-reviewed study by a paid researcher, I view it as a branch of marketing and not as actual science. Because who's paying for this shit, right? I don't need to be a scientist to understand the conflict of interest and the economic levers or the economic incentives involved in it. What do you think about, so back to my bacon grease, do you think that is there any benefit to that, or is it any better than Crisco as an alternative?
Oh, yeah.
I'm not going to go, I don't have a farm and I don't hunt.
Yeah, it's better than Crisco, definitely. Crisco is all bad oils. Crisco is all these hydrogenated omega-6s, and that is, it's been shown to cause insulin resistance, obesity. It's not good for anything but as fuel, and it gets in the back of the line. It's not
even good as fuel.
Yeah, it's not even good as fuel, and so people tend not to burn it. Their bodies just store it, and then it's difficult to get your body to burn it, and so it becomes one of the drivers of the obesity epidemic and the diabetes epidemic, and they tend to be also oxidized, so that things are rancid. You consume a rancid oil, and it goes into your tissues, and it begins to oxidize your cells, and so it causes increased levels of increased rates of aging. It damages your mitochondria, where the ATP energy transfer is happening in every cell, and when that happens, then you open the door for all kinds of cancers. So, the guy that spearheaded this whole anti-saturated fat, pro vegetable oil or seed oil movement was a guy named Ansel Keys. And back in the 50s, he did a study where he had data from 22 different countries, and his assignment was to associate heart disease with saturated fat. But with all of the data, he wasn't able to make that correlation. So he had to whittle down the countries from 22 down to 7 in order to portray that there was an association between the consumption of saturated fat and heart disease. And so the entire study was fraudulent. And today it was recently revealed, because there was a bunch of documents that were uncovered that proved that he was actually being funded by the margarine industry at the time. And at this time, the margarine industry, margarine was being made from cottonseed oil. And so it was an industry fraud that today is still used even by the medical community to try to demonize saturated fat, when saturated fat in and of itself has absolutely nothing to do with what they're telling us it does.
You're muted, Flow State.
And margarine, if I remember, is is just one molecule off from being plastic. Is that correct?
Yeah, margarine is a fucking killer, dude. It's like death,
Yeah, I'm
in,
not
a,
sure.
death in a plastic pot.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's hydrogenated vegetable, hydrogenated seed oils. So what they're doing there is they're trying to. Remember earlier I said that a saturated fat is simply a fat that's it's protected by a layer of hydrogen atoms, and that happens naturally with saturated fat. So hydrogenated seed oils are they've got a process that involves a lot of heat where they're saturating these fats with hydrogen atoms, but the industrial process that they do that with requires a lot of heat. All of these seed oils are exposed to the air, so there's oxidation occurring, and so those seed oils contain chemicals in there. These hydrogenated seed oils contain carcinogenic molecules and rancid oils. So they're opening the door to all types of cancer. They cause increased rates of aging because your own tissues are being oxidized by these rancid fats. It's it's horrible. I think if you wanted to go with a plant-based oil to cook with, probably the best one would be coconut oil. I think would be the best one. Cold pressed coconut oil, I think, would probably be the best one.
I got a few things left to do today, so I'm going to jump out here in a minute. I might come back later if y'all are still on. But before I go, do you have like I said, I live in city limits. I got 2 chickens left, but can't grow my own food, obviously. Can't hunt properly. I'm a felon, so I can't hunt really. Do you have any like little tips or tricks or advice for anybody for the average American diet? Right, we all shop at the grocery store and eat through drive-throughs. Do you have any little tips or tricks like coconut oils and things like that?
Well, I could tell you what you could stay away from. Like palm oil is really dangerous.
And I stay away from margarine for sure, even though butter is like 5 times more expensive.
Palm oil, canola oil.
Canola, is that any better? Is that worse? That's the cheapest one, so I assume it's the worst for you.
Yeah, well, there are 2 really good ones that I know that I use is extra virgin olive oil, which is, and you have to really make sure that it's not been.
It's not that slutty oil.
Well, no, that it hasn't been mixed in with vegetable oil.
Yeah, the extra virgin is less likely to be spiked or diluted.
Yeah.
Cut with seed oils, corn oil, and canola and palm.
Yeah. So then you got sunflower seed oil, which is also extracted naturally. So that's good. That's good oil right there. And
why would sunflower seed be extracted naturally, but others aren't?
Because it's hard pressed. It's like olive oils.
Meaning it's literally pressed instead of like soaked in chemicals.
Yeah, cold pressed. The good thing about that is it's less likely to be rancid. However, it's still going to be heavy in omega-6s. Here's what I would recommend: is I would recommend finding some like-minded friends or neighbors and go to eatwild.com, and there'll be the second link from the top is you click on that and you can find local grass-fed beef producers, for example, and you can go find a local cattleman that you can buy a steer from, and you and 4 other families pool your money and buy one of these. It could be
quarter of beef.
Yeah, it could be 4 of you, it could be 6
smart.
of you, but then you go and you buy the animal and have, either the farmer may do it for free or he may charge a small fee to trailer that animal to a custom slaughterhouse. It doesn't have to be USDA certified, USDA inspected. They have something called custom slaughterhouses that they're perfectly clean, perfectly safe. In many cases, they're better than USDA inspected facilities, and it'll be cheaper than going to one of these expensive USDA, because it's one of the ways they keep small producers like me out of the meat business.
It's a barrier to entry.
Yeah, exactly. But for like you take like you and 3 or 4 other families, go in on pull your money together, buy the animal, then pay to have it slaughtered and packaged, and then y'all can drive to the slaughterhouse and pick up that fresh frozen beef, and then take it home, put it in the freezer, and that way you can actually get it cheaper than if you were to go to the supermarket and buy just regular junk beef.
And you touched on something that I want to kind of emphasize for anybody watching who, like I said, I have an economics background, and from an economic perspective, like understanding what the USDA or these regulatory entities, what their role is from an economic perspective, it's a barrier to entry. They're not really about, protecting people. Their role in the production system is to prevent smaller competition from entering the market.
That's right. And that's one of the reasons why, while I am, I do speak to the carnivore community a lot. There are some of the most prominent carnivore influencers out there are affiliated with the National Cattlemen's Beef Association, which is controlled by companies like Tyson, Cargill, JBS, McDonald's. And so they've been telling everyone, don't bother buying local. It's too expensive. Just buy the cheapest grocery store beef that you can find, and that will make you healthy. Well, the truth is that if they go from the regular junk food, American diet to that supermarket meat, it's going to be healthier for them, but it's also putting people like me out of business. I actually did have a meat business, but the overhead, I wasn't getting enough support to keep it open. I lost so much money over the year and a half that I tried to get that rolling, and I was butting heads with these prominent carnivore influencers, because I was trying to tell people, before you throw your local beef producers away, look at your budget and see if you might be wasting, you might have a Netflix subscription that you haven't used in a year and a half. Who knows? People have subscriptions to things that they forgot about. They're getting these monthly dings, and then they're using this excuse that I don't want to buy meat from a local producer. And the problem is that, like a grass-fed producer, we're not using hormones and pesticides and stuff like this. It can take us 2 to 3 times longer to grow out a steer that's fat enough and large enough to turn into steaks. And so it's more costly. And then the insurance that you have to carry insurance if you're going to be selling meat to the public. That's very expensive. The cost of slaughtering and packaging is very expensive. There's tremendous amounts of overhead. And that's why I recommend for people now to support their local meat producers by going to them and buying the animal and having that moved to the slaughterhouse. And that way the producer can stay in business, and you can get meat that's cheaper than you can buy at the supermarket.
And I mean, people have to understand that you're not buying comparable products, right? Because if you're making your purchasing power or purchasing decisions based purely on price, you can't be surprised or upset or blame anybody but yourself if, when you voted with your dollar, what you voted for was to buy shit for cheap. Don't be mad or surprised when what you end up with is shit. You made the decision, you voted with your dollar, and I agree.
Yeah, not only are you getting a much better product usually when you buy local, but also when you buy from the supermarket. This is a big problem. We've been trying to, you think a an organization like the National Cattlemen's Beef Association be working on behalf of American cattlemen? But no, they're working on behalf of these giant companies like Tyson, Cargill, McDonald's, JBS. And so these companies are actually exporting American beef, and they're importing beef from Brazil and Argentina. And then when you go to the supermarket, the way the law works is they can put a made in the USDA sticker on the package. And so you're wanting to buy an American. Yeah, it looks like you are, but you're actually buying Argentina. And so meanwhile, the American cattlemen are going bankrupt in record numbers. And what that's doing to Americans' food security, and the same thing is happening in Canada, Patrick, is that locally our food security is becoming dangerously thin, the food security, because if the supermarket decides to stop offering meat, then where are you going to get your meat? The only option will be to go to a local producer. But people are messing around, and they're not supporting their local producers, and so they're going out of business. So the day may come soon that the supermarkets declare green and say, we're not going to support climate change anymore. We're going to offer you these plant-based meat alternatives, and you can either buy that or you can go hungry. And so if you've got local producers around you that are still in business, then you can do this thing where you pull together with other like-minded friends, buy an animal and have it slaughtered and get cheap, nutritious meat and fat. But if we continue to buy all our meat at the supermarket and thumb our nose at our local meat producers and let them go bankrupt, then when that day comes that the supermarket decides to do the same thing that Budweiser's doing and Target, where they're not offering meat anymore because of this woke agenda, then people aren't going to have meat. There's not going to be a source for it.
Yeah, I a few years ago, I haven't eaten McDonald's in like 3 years. And a few years ago, when I was like kind of looking into it, it says 100% American beef, but they do exactly what you're talking about. Apparently, they raise the cattle here, then ship them to Taiwan or some East Asian country, I don't remember which one, to have it processed and shipped it back. Now, I don't know 100% for sure because I don't work in McDonald's to do their finances, but I'm not convinced that labor over there is cheap enough to justify shipping tons and tons and tons of cattle around the globe. I just don't buy that. So it makes me wonder, what the fuck are we getting shipped back? I kind of like to joke that it's that China's shipping out their dead people, and that's what we're eating because they've got a huge population, and we're eating Lord knows what the fuck is in McDonald's burgers. But all I know is McDonald's has everything from McDonald's has a McDonald's taste, and nothing else anywhere has the McDonald's taste. What the fuck is that? It's probably human meat. That's my theory.
Well, I don't know. Nothing would surprise me, but I do know this. This has come out. You know who Joel Salatin is? Have you ever heard his name? He's a regenerative livestock grower. He's been one of my mentors. He's built up his soil carbon. He does all pastured animals. He's got a business selling meat. He's been watching these congressional. They're right now. There's a lawsuit going on in the United States where they're trying to make it a law that they have to label meat that came from an animal that received an mRNA technology, so-called vaccine, and because there is the prospect that could become like taking the clot shot, where you're consuming this mRNA technology. And starting in 2020, from what Joel Salatin said, he was watching these hearings, that the poultry industry started using this mRNA technology in animals in the poultry in 2012. And then for the pigs, it started in 2015. And then for cattle, it started in 2020. So for 2 years now, people have been consuming supermarket meat that apparently has a high likelihood of containing these mRNA vaccines. And is that something that we want to experiment? It's not something I want to experiment with. So I would try to avoid. It just gives me another reason why I wouldn't want to eat beef from a supermarket or chicken from a supermarket.
And then I know that Facebook has weird rules against, you can't sell animals or animal products on Facebook Marketplace. I know that I'm a member of a few local groups where they're not selling specifically products on Facebook, but it's like local farm groups around the Kansas City area. And you can find shit through there. I've still never had raw milk, which actually is something I really want to try. And that reminded me I need to do it. But you had mentioned earlier a website. What was it?
Eatwild.com. One word, eatwild.com.
Right on. I'm about to jump off. Good talk. I appreciate it. And just so you know, Patrick, I assume you're cool with. I'm not restreaming, but I do intend to clip this and make it a separate video on my channel in the future with you, if I have your blessing. Anyways, thanks guys. I'm taking off. I may be back later. Appreciate it.
Enjoyed it. Bye.